Good morning, day, everybody. Welcome to the second day of Slush. Next we're gonna have an interesting panel discussion with a wide gang of experienced private investors, business angels. So here we go. The theme for today, we're seeing a lot of startups here during Slush. We're gonna have a lot of more to see, and of course, some of you even have the role of an investor. And let's start with a little poll. Let's activate you. Hands up who have the role as an entrepreneur. Hands up. How many of you entrepreneurs? About 1/3. How many of you are with the investor profile? Wow, 1/3 as well. And the rest, this is definitely for you as well. We're going to discuss in what different forms we can make investments, how can we increase value, and how does it technically work. I'm going to do some stupid questions. That's very natural for me. My name is Claes Mikko Nilsson. I work as a coordinator for Finnish Business Angels Network, FiBAN. FiBAN shortly, it's a private investors association, non-profit. About 220 members, approved members here in Finland and North Europe. Our goal, we aim to inspire and increase the knowledge of private investments and to help you guys, startups, entrepreneurs, to pass the value of death and get you to the big scale investment sector and hopefully help you doing the growth. But without further ado, let's introduce our panelists today. We got half an hour time to go and discuss, and hopefully you'll be active, though it's early morning. It's just 11, so we'll get it on. So let's start. Elina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, thanks, Claes Mikko. Well, I'm Elina Lepomäki. I've been doing these business angel investments for a bit more than 2 years now. I joined FiBAN a bit more than a year ago because I think it's a great organization for Finnish business angels in general, for sharing knowledge and getting to know best practices and also for screening companies. My background is actually in finance. I've been working 8 years in investment banking. Before I came back to Finland, the past 3 years I was in London, and before that in the other Nordic countries. And my background is in computer science and finance. So I'm a Master of Science of Technology and Economics. So that's me.
Thank you. Jussi?
Yes, my name is Jussi Heinle. I have been in angel investing space for 14 years, since 98, when I made my first investment in Finland into wireless space. And we brought the company to London. I moved to London as well, 97. And we made an exit in that case, 2001. Another exit, 2002. And then I was pretty silent for 5 years and came back to Finland 2005 and started to make angel investments again 2006. And I have been involved with the Finnish angel community now for maybe 5-6 years, and we have established FiBAN together like 2 years ago. I was one of the co-founders and very eager to take this culture and ecosystem forward. I have made about 10 investments. Half of them are sweat equity, so that's my specialty, and half of the investments are a combination of sweat and money. So that's my field this morning. Thank you.
I think we should give Jussi an extra applause because he had a surgery yesterday and he did a good job just to come over today. So let's give a good hand. Good. You survived. Excellent. Ari, would you tell a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Ari Korhonen. I'm a full-time business angel, now 5.5 years already. Former entrepreneur, done 20 investments, both in Finland and abroad. Done one successful angel exit from Severa company 2 years ago. And more or less trying to go also more international all the time. I'm also one of the co-founders of FiBAN and also vice chairman of EBAN, European Business Angel Network. Thanks.
Jukka.
My name is Jukka Mäkinen. I have been in venture capital industry for 12 years at Equitech Partners, making about 40 investments altogether, about 20 exits, some successful, some not so successful. And then for last 2 years, when we made a secondary transaction, I have been now as an angel investor now for about 2 years. Background originally is from IT industry, IBM, Oracle, Siemens.
Excellent. A lot of skills here today just for you guys, so be active. So quickly, what is business angel investing? As the comments were, it's a lot about, it's just not money. It's most of it is networks and personal skills. And here we got a lot of skills, especially. And we're going to discuss how these skills and even some of it, the capital is implemented in these high growth companies. So we got 4 themes. We got a bit about the specialities for these ladies and gentlemen. We have shareholder agreements. We're going to start with that, then go over to convertible notes. Then we're going to discuss a little bit about options, and then head to sweat equity, which Jussi already mentioned. A little bit more technical details. Yesterday we had an angel best practice panel, and if you're interested to find more about what angel investing is, you can just go to FiBAN.org or come and talk to us afterwards. But let's get started. Shareholders agreement. How many of you have ever done a shareholders agreement with an investor? 1/4. Quite few. So if you have any personal comments, feel free to agree or disagree. But let's start with Ari. You're done a few shareholder agreements. So what's your experience, and what would be your guides to entrepreneurs and investors? What to think about?
Okay, thank you. First of all, shareholders agreement must exist. Investors don't make any investment if there's no shareholders agreement. Oh, that's very, very seldom if somebody is doing investment without shareholders agreement, because shareholders agreement is a document where the investors and founders, they agree how they are going to develop the company, what are the sort of targets, and maybe something about the exit, and how different kind of things are treated. For example, if there is something like restrictions for the competition and not to hire people out from the company, and there's restrictions both to the entrepreneurs and both to the investors, and it's a really, really important document. If everything goes well, and it's hardly never needed in the real working environment. But if something goes wrong and maybe founder wants to leave the company or something, there should be found the mechanism how these kind of extraordinary things are handled. And of course, selling the shares is one which is described there. What kind of mechanism we have when we are selling the shares of the company. I think that's in a nutshell.
Okay, but why isn't a handshake enough? Why do you need that? Like, we're Finns, the Finnish brand committee said that Finland, the most trusted handshake in the world. So why can't all these startups and entrepreneurs why isn't it enough with a handshake? Ari.
Okay, good question. You raised another issue which it would be really interesting to discuss also. It's a trust. There must be a trust between the entrepreneurs and the investors. If there's no trust, there's no need to make the investment, not at all. That's a really important issue. But I think the trust is not enough, because times are changing, people are changing, situation is changing, everything needs to be in the paper. That's really crucial, because after 10 years, I'm already 52, so I don't remember what I agreed 10 years ago, and average investment time in angel investing is from 9 to 11 years. I don't remember so long.
So just a warning, if you meet someone of these investors and they're, okay, let's do it, so you might be good friends, really good friends for the next 9 years. That's an average. So that's an average angel investment size. Jukka.
Maybe I would like to add on to this Ari's comment, because of course you can take money typically from your family, from your friends, and maybe some fools without an agreement. But then there's really a lot of trust and a different kind of relationship. But when you talk with somebody who is trying to make a professional approach, who is not only trusting you, but who wants to have a dialogue with you, who wants to document exactly what has been agreed and how if you have issues, how they are going to be solved, then you just have to have the agreement. It's actually also, it's not only for the protection of the investor, it's also for the protection of the entrepreneur.
Okay.
Yeah, and in FiBAN, we nowadays prefer syndication. In other words, we'd like to get people to share the risk. So it's not only one investor or two, usually it's half dozen. And if we have half dozen founders and some sweat equity people, there needs to be a document and the rules of game on paper. So in syndication, it's even more important.
All right. Like yesterday, we talked about syndication. It sounds a little bit like a spaghetti. A lot of besserwisser, or how do we call it, investors going to one company. But just quickly about the syndication, Ari, you talked about it yesterday, syndication. Why is it a good alternative? And is there any good shareholder agreements for that?
Surely there's a lot of good models, but shareholders agreement must be always done to every single company, dedicate to that company needs and that entrepreneur needs and that investor needs. So you can get a model on the base, but then you need to modify it to the specific need of this company. Syndication, of course, I don't know. Okay, I don't know nearly anything, but one people don't know so much than 6 people or 8 people. So if you have that's a brain power. So you have, as an entrepreneur, you have much more benefit when you have more investors. Then if you afraid that okay, those investors will mix everything and everybody is throwing you to the different direction, then it can be handled with the shareholders agreement that there's a certain rules how investors use their voice in a company. So it can be only one voice or 2 voice in a board, let's say, and all if there's 10 investors, they are working through those 1 or 2 people who are in the board. So it don't need to be a mess from the entrepreneur point of view.
Okay.
Just to add to, Ari spoke about the entrepreneur's point of view, but from the investor's point of view, syndication obviously makes huge sense, because then you're actually quite secure that the entire financing round, so to say, goes through and is completed, so that you will actually close the round without being the sort of the only investor who just happens to be fool enough to jump into that business. And the second thing is clearly that then you will have the knowledge of the others. And what it also allows is for you to actually make investments in also several companies to also manage your risks, because if you, say you have your net wealth is 200,000 euros, it most definitely doesn't make sense to put all of the money into one company, but maybe into 10 companies. And so if you use a syndication mechanism right at the beginning when you go in, then it just pays off.
All right. Elena, what is your experience? What do you definitely want to have in a shareholders agreement? What is definitely what you can't live without, and what's something that you feel like it's a bit problematic? So is there something, how big are these? What should the entrepreneur be prepared with when you come with the shareholders agreement?
Well, there are several things. Maybe we shouldn't go into the nitty-gritty details, but just on a header level, so to say, I think most things to pay attention to are just the seniorities of the ownership. So if something goes wrong, and as Ari says, typically you won't need the agreement if everything goes smoothly, but the day something doesn't go that smoothly, then actually that's the day when you go back and try to find the agreement and see what it actually says. So basically all of the dilution points which have been agreed at the beginning. So assuming that your company is actually going to be diluted, or the company that you've invested in, then you can actually see in the agreement who gets what at that point. And that's really important to pay attention to, because as we all know, well, we are happy to expect that most of the investments we do are hugely successful, and we will be the next Googles and Rovios and so forth. But it also happens, and typically quite often, that the companies actually don't do that well, and it even fail. So at that point, you need to, or you benefit both ways if you know exactly what to do. So you don't need to have an army of lawyers to sort out what has been agreed and what hasn't been agreed. So that's one point, and obviously all other points. Who is the shareholder? That's also one very important thing. Who is actually the shareholder, and who is an investor who doesn't have the same rights as a shareholder. So if you come in as an investor who isn't a party of the shareholders agreement, then make sure that you either have the same rights, or if you have other rights than say not the same rights, not as good rights as the actual shareholders who have been forming the shareholders agreement, then make sure at least that you know what your rights are, where you stand.
Okay, we got a limited time, but so all this classic situation, all this time and energy to a paper which you hope not to use. Sounds like a business plan, doesn't it? Anyway, Ari, quick comment.
Yeah, still about this syndication. I think from the entrepreneur point of view, it's good also that way that there's a more financing power for the next rounds. If you have a one investor or two, but if you have a 5 or 10, you have much more financing power for the next round, already ready inside of the company.
And Jukka, you say.
Okay, I just wanted to continue with what Elina said. If there's one thing that you need to go back to the shareholders agreement afterwards, that's always at the case when you're doing exit. And there it is the drag losses. How can you get all the shares to be sold at the same time? Because the value is different if you can sell 100% or if you can sell 70% or even 90%, because then many people don't want to go through the procedure to get the 100% together. So one thing in the shareholders agreement, I think that's the most important one, and that's where you most often need to go back and find the shareholders agreement and read through the clauses. How can you do that?
All right, so we agree we do need a physical paper to get it on, as said. Okay, excellent. Well, let's go to more details then. And as we mentioned, we had the second theme would be convertible notes, and that had received a increased amount of interest. And Jukka, would you tell what it is and why would that be an alternative for entrepreneurs and investors to have as an investment model?
The whole investment thing starts from investors' point of view, that we would like to earn and make money with this one, and then we would like to control the risk. And therefore there are different elements that you can tackle this one. When you have a company, you think its value is 1 million, and we think it's worth 500,000. How do we make the investment then? How is it possible to, at the end, make the investment so that both parties are satisfied? You are saying that the company is making next year 5 million revenue, and we are saying it makes 2 million. So you can then, to tackle the risks, you can either do it so that you already agree for the valuation in between, like in this case between 1 million, 500,000, 7,500, 750,000. You can agree on both of those, or then you can agree kind of flexible structures. You can agree different types of share classes that you typically see. Almost every venture capitalist is wanting you to do A round, B round, C round, and then this is A, B, and C shares that have different structures when you are exiting the company, liquidation preferences. And then you can also achieve the same matter using convertible loans. Convertible loan is a very nice instrument from an investor point of view, because legally, of course, it's preferred to equity. So that's why it is often a nice tool to use. And so if the company is liquidated, so the investor first gets back the capital before the entrepreneurs get anything. And then you can tie to this loan different types of options to convert it to equity. So it has both the elements. So in this my example, for instance, if it happens as the entrepreneur said that the next year's revenue is 5 million, then you can agree that, okay, then the original value if it's converted, is higher than if it's what the investors thought, then it is lower. So it is a very, very flexible tool to take into account both parties' interests. And that's,
All right.
I think, the main idea with this one, and it's a very simple structure to implement.
Just a quick, how many of you used this model as an investment? Jussi, what about you? All of you. Okay, so it's very familiar. What about the entrepreneurs? Are the entrepreneurs that use this model, convertible loans? 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, it goes quite a lot into details, but definitely that's an alternative. Ari, you had a comment on that.
Yeah, about this, it's not very much used in Finland, but it's really a lot of used in Silicon Valley, for example. So the most of the investments there, majority of them are done like this. But in Finland, it's not used very much. Maybe sometimes in the second round, with the internal second round in a company where you already are in. For example, for me, it has been used only in that kind of sort of follow-on rounds.
Okay, well, let's one comment more.
One more comment. The reason why in Finland it sometimes is tricky to use is because we have so much Tekes and Finvera and other kind of tools that we can use in the companies, and often when this is now regarded not as equity, so maybe it makes it harder to get these grants. So that's why you always have to take into account the total picture if it makes sense for the investors and for the companies to use these tools. But quite often this is a very, very nice tool, at least if you have to do something in between, kind of a temporary arrangement.
Okay. Well, you mentioned options. Elina, let's go over to that part as well. Elina, what would you say the option parts? How do you use that as an investor?
As an investor, obviously, buying an option is an option to buy shares in a company, typically in this case. But actually, as an investment, options typically aren't used that much in startup companies. Options are more often a tool for compensation. And why? Well, if you want to either have your staff actually be compensated for the overall success of the company and be part of in the same boat, that's one thing. And also, as another thing, we will also touch upon sweat equity today, hopefully, if we have the time. Then options are also a great tool for actually granting outside investors some stakes in the company without having to pay the taxes right away. So it's a very powerful way to manage the taxes that have to be paid on both the company side and the investors side, or the receivers end if it's a member of staff. Because typically in Finland, if you don't actually pay attention, if you grant an option to buy shares in your company, if you actually put the strike level of the options, so actually the price at which the investor is able to buy shares in your company, if you put that level too low versus the market value of the company, which is effectively the last round when you took money in from outside investors, then it might happen that the investor needs to pay the taxes right away as income tax, and you as a company need to pay the employment costs and all what that is related to that. And then that is typically not something that you want to achieve, because actually the beauty with options is exactly that for companies, startups which don't have that much cash at the moment, or the cash that you have is actually used for purposes which are much more important than actually paying somebody's salary, then you can basically compensate somebody for something that will occur in the future, which is the success of the company, without paying out anything, and especially not paying to the state, without paying to the government something that is effectively not worth anything at the moment. So that's a good thing with options. And options,
Wow.
Obviously, just very quickly, when you make the shareholders agreement, typically it makes sense to do the option program at the same time, and it's a very light sort of agreement as well, a light document, typically only a couple of pages. It really makes sense to do it right away, because you might find various uses for options in the future.
Very good. That a lot of technical. Quick poll here. Entrepreneurs, you who've been receiving an investment, how familiar? How many of you taken options as an investment alternative? Hands up. Yeah, that's quite a many. Very familiar. But Ari, you had a quick comment before we go over to sweat equity.
I can pass.
Okay, you're pass. It's a lot of technical data. Just love it this time over the morning day. But okay,
Okay, I
go
can say
ahead.
one thing. When quite often this it's used to motivate both hired key employees and also entrepreneurs can be motivated by option program. And when the investment is done, then it's the right time to agree about the size of the option program. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Because it's diluting everybody. It's diluting the investor and it's diluting the entrepreneur.
Okay.
So in the time of the investment, it should be agreed, at least in a certain level.
We'll do a quick summary of this in the end, but then, like I said, they discussed a lot about the capital, but as business angel invest, that's a lot about brain power and network. So Jussi, you know a lot about sweat equity and the knowledge investment. So what would you describe? Why is that a good alternative for an early stage high growth company?
Yes, in fact, in FiBAN, we made about 27 sweat equity deals by midsummer, so we have some knowledge from FiBAN as well. I feel that sweat equity is a great tool. In a sweat equity, you exchange your efforts and input and knowledge and work to stocks. It's a very simple tool. And sooner you can do that with a company, the better, because tax implications are easier. If the company doesn't have any value, you can buy the shares at nominal price, and of course you have to promise something against the stocks. So usually we made a very good consultancy agreement with the company where we promised to deliver certain things, usually related to sales and marketing, in some cases some other advisory work or even the financing round, so we could organize the next financing round against stocks. And when the company doesn't have any real value, you don't have troubles with the taxation authority. Another way we have done sweat equity is that we do that through our consultancy company. And we could even participate. I have done a couple of deals with Ari even. We have participated the real funding round, put the money into the company, and at the same time we have agreed with the company that they will use our services in the future at certain price. And that's how we get the money in a way back from the company, and the company gets our best efforts to develop the case. And in taxation, there is a benefit because in that case, you can file the stocks in your fixed assets, not into your financial assets. And in the case of exit, it's tax-free in Finland at least. And of course, if the bankruptcy happens, you can't deduct the losses.
Let's not get too deep with the tax element, but definitely it's an important role.
Yes.
Just quickly, how many of you used sweat equity as an investment model? Jussi, Jukka? Okay, it's just as a pure. Of course, you always invest your knowledge. What about the audience? Entrepreneurs, have you ever received a pure sweat equity investment? Quite a few as well, but not that active. But
May I comment here? I don't agree with the audience in this matter because I think that most of you actually are doing sweat equity, because when you create a company, you are putting your own sweat equity over there. Maybe you take your team members there, maybe you pay them very low salary, you pay 100 euros per month, and then you give them shares. That's also sweat equity. That's sweat equity within your team. And as well, when you are using it, as we were talking about as investors, exactly you can use them within your team and you are using it all the time. So you are already very familiar with this term.
Yes, Ari.
And this is also not so black and white, either sweat equity or money investment or financial investment. It's in every angel investing case, there's always sweat equity involved. So angels give the knowledge to the company, like a coaching, mentoring sort of thing, board membership, and also networks for the use of the company, and then the financial investment, the money. So I think in every case, there's also sweat equity as a part. But this is really important that you can do. If you find good talent, you can do this kind of sweat equity deal. with sweat equity investor also.
Yeah.
Just as a quick note, so you as an entrepreneur, if somebody comes in, a consultant, so to say, and says that for his efforts, he wants to be paid in cash only, then obviously beware, because obviously you need the cash for quite many purposes, so you should prioritize quite a bit. And if that consultant is not ready to take your equity, to take shares in your company as payment for his efforts, then there's something fishy, because then he doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't actually believe that he's able to help your company to be the success that actually the shares are worth something very big in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. There's unfortunately no more time for questions, but a quick summary. So when these gentlemen and ladies and the investors from the audience, when they go around, so there's alternative, please notice the private investment element. A lot of knowledge, a lot of networks, a little bit of capital, also what tools, how to limit risk. Then there's the sweat equity capital. And definitely, if you want to have more information about this, we have a more training from FiBAN. 9th of January, we got the first business angel training, which goes in details for this part. But hopefully you will come over and discuss, do some more detailed question after, and let's give a big hand for the panelists, and hopefully have a good day. Thank you very much. At the next event, we have 2:15. That's about what to consider before making the investment. So that goes more in detail. That's on the pitch stage. So see you there.